Welcome everyone to the July Entrepreneur Masters series with me, the real Jason Duncan. We are doing this as part of the Results University student experience. And every month we do a 90-minute or so a master series where I bring in an expert in a certain topic, which you're going to meet the expert in just a moment, that's going to help you as an entrepreneur maximize your experience, maximize your impact, and make you more successful. So thank you for attending this webinar today. All Results University students are invited and get to participate in this particular session every single month. No matter you're a basic student or an advanced student, this is the one that I want all students to be a part of. This particular one is designed so that we can bring in outside experts. So it's not just me teaching everything. It's not just the same person. You get outside expertise, someone else coming in and giving you information that'll make you better and get you to success so that you can live that ideal life. So no matter where you are in the world, no matter what type of business you operate, I want all Results University students to participate in this particular series of our webinars that are live trainings every month for students, because I want you to see other people and how they can help you get to success. The other two sessions that we do in live training are only available to advanced students, and the Results University advanced students get access to an Ask Jason Live 1-hour webinar I do once a month where I open it up and we do live questions from students all over the world about their struggles, their triumphs, the things they're working through as entrepreneurs. We've got one of those coming up in August. And so if you are a student, just go to the events page once you log into your account, and it'll show you when those events happen. We're working on getting those events also put on my page at therealjasonduncan.com. So there'll be an events tab that you can check on that. So no matter where you are, you can see what's happening. And then the third live training that Results University students get access to, specifically the advanced students get access to, is the live webinar series where I do a 1-hour lecture on a different topic. And I just did one last week on the 5 keys to success. And I know some of the attendees, I can see the list of the attendees, were very impressed with what they learned and have begun to apply those. And it's actually starting to change how they're functioning as an entrepreneur. So that's what we do. That's why we're here. Thank you for being here. Final note on housekeeping items is this session, as all sessions are being recorded. And if you are a student in Results University, you have permanent access to these recordings. All you got to do is log into your account and you can go to video trainings, and all these videos are going to be there for you. You just look this one up under the Entrepreneur Masters series. All right, so let me turn his camera on and get our panelist welcomed in for today. So I'm going to unmute him, and let's see if I can put here, ask to start video. So Eric, if you'll go ahead and do that. Once you get that on, I'll do the introduction. There he is. There he is. This is Eric Horton, and I'm gonna give an extended kind of introduction to Eric, and then I'm gonna let Eric introduce himself and kind of fill in some gaps. And then we're going to talk about the topic for today, which I think all the attendees are going to really, really dig, because all of, well, I don't know if all of you, but I would imagine all of you have got a LinkedIn account, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So Eric Horton spent 26 years in, I think I have the date right. Is that right? 26 years, 26 years in the Army, traveling the world, serving our country with honor, and found himself when he left the Army, like a lot of veterans who leave, trying to figure out, well, what do I do next? He's a relatively young guy. He's not retirement age at 65 or 70. He's still young and vibrant and got a young family, and he still can add a lot to this world. But his 26 years of Army doesn't necessarily immediately translate into the veteran or to the civilian world. He took a couple of jobs in the civilian world, which he was highly qualified to do, but he'll tell the story about one day I think his car broke down, or he had a flat tire on the side of the road, and he's like, I just want to step out in front of a truck. If I got to go do this job every day, I'm not interested. And so that led him to start looking through LinkedIn for ways that he could connect with other people that could get his status raised to another level, where he could actually go find opportunities, whether it be a job or other opportunities through LinkedIn. And he poured himself into this. Well, as anything else, when you pour yourself into something that deeply for such a long period of time, you become an expert at it. It's kind of like the Malcolm Gladwell book, the Outliers, where he talks about the 10,000 hours that you have to put into something. Well, Eric has put in those hours. He now is one of the top 10 experts on LinkedIn in the world. Like, he knows how to manage and manipulate in a good way, not in a negative way, but manage and manipulate the LinkedIn algorithms and how you function inside LinkedIn in a way that changes things. And so, but here's the coolest part of that story. The coolest part of that story for Eric is that not only did he learn how to do that, but he started leveraging that to help other veterans transition from service in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever it happens to be, into civilian life. And so he calls himself the transition hacker. So he helps people transition primarily using these secret tips and tricks that he knows on how to use LinkedIn. And I'll let him kind of explain how those work. That's the point of the Entrepreneur Master Series webinar that we're doing today. But he learned those things and has helped countless people transition from military life into civilian life successfully by finding jobs using the things that he is going to teach us today as entrepreneurs, how to manage and manipulate the system inside LinkedIn to get where you want to go. Now, I'll give you a short testimonial, and then I'm going to ask Eric to introduce himself. But so Eric and I met fortuitously through another organization that he and I belonged to together at an event in Nashville that I was hosting. And he came up and introduced himself as, you know, his name, and kind of, I said, well, what do you do? Just kind of the same thing. He starts telling me, well, at first it wasn't this big boom that I eventually had, but he was telling me what he did. I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And then we connected, and I said, okay, show me a couple of these things that you're talking about. And he didn't charge me anything. And like, he just sat down, we had lunch or coffee, and he kind of showed me a few things. And I'm telling you, like, right now, true statement, to this day, since I started implementing that, my connections on LinkedIn have gone up. My views of my profile have gone up. And the number one place where I get the most views on video consistently, now sometimes I'll do a YouTube video and it gets tons of views, but consistently on all social media platforms, and I'm active on LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube, consistently LinkedIn gets the most views of any video. How do I do that? Well, first of all, I got to make interesting content. But beyond that, using the tips that Eric showed me, I'm getting 100, 200, 300 views on videos on a pretty consistent basis. Sometimes they're less, sometimes more. But that's what we're going to show you today with Eric Horton. So that was a terribly long introduction, Eric. But Eric, you deserve it. Thank you for your service to our country. I'm glad that I know you. Thank you for being here on the webinar, the Entrepreneur Master Series with Results University today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having that, man. And I really appreciate that. And, you know, just to give you a little bit of the background piece of it, you know, when I had that tragic moment, you know, on the side of the highway, I was like, there's got to be more to this, right? So this is what the Army taught me to do, but there's got to be more to this. And I was like, I'm just miserable in this current role, highly qualified for it. You know, everything just fit right. But I was like, this process is not working for me. And I said, that's my bread and butter. Like, I know process improvement. And I said, there's got to be a faster way to do this transition, right? And I loved life hacks. Everything that you can do to process improve yourself, there's a faster, easier, simpler way, right? So you get to maximize your return on your investment back to yourself. And so I just said, it just was an epiphany: life hacks, transition hacks. And I started looking at how I could do this, use this to make connections, to get soldiers in front of the right people that could actually help them tell their story better, translate their needs and capabilities. And then it just kind of grew over time, where I could start talking about, these are things you need to be doing, these are things you don't need to be doing. And then there was more doors, that more than I started deep diving into what you can do with it, I was like, wow, this isn't just for looking for a job. You can do this for a lot of different things as a business owner, as a leader at your company, and things like that. And it just kind of spiraled out of control, to where we're at today, right? Where I can sit down and have a 5-minute discussion with you and deep dive LinkedIn that fast, and be excited about it and get you motivated about doing it too. So
now, what's also funny about this story, Eric, is that I have another friend who was recently, about the time we met, was about to drop some major coin on another LinkedIn guru who was going to show him how to maximize his LinkedIn, reach out, get new contacts, get new leads, you know, the thing that we want LinkedIn to do, which is monetize. We want to figure out how we make money through LinkedIn. And he was about to drop that. And he actually came to me and he said, hey, I'm about to spend X number of dollars, which was a lot of money. I'm about to spend an X number of dollars on this person. And I said, I didn't know enough to tell him not to do it. I just said, just hold that thought. Can you wait? And that was right before I went and sat down with you, because I knew what you did. And then I went back to him and said, okay, I said, dude, don't do that. You need to work. You need to go over here and talk to Eric. And then come to find out, that person. And this is not about mentioning names, but
Right.
that person. And that she is actually one of the top LinkedIn experts out there. And people do pay her a lot of money to learn how to do it. So what you're
Right.
doing now is you're not only helping people transition from military to civilian services, you're helping people through Results University today. And you and I are working on some stuff together, which we'll talk about at the end, about how to maximize this for entrepreneurs and business owners. So let me ask you this question. So specifically for LinkedIn, what is the number one, like if you had to cull it down, like all the people that are watching this webinar, whether live today or they're watching on recording after the fact, if you had to narrow it down and say, look, if you're only going to do one thing on LinkedIn, like this is the only thing you're going to do to your profile, and then the only thing you're going to do actively. So there's two things, like what do you do to your profile? And then how do you participate in LinkedIn? If they could only do one thing on each of those categories, let's start there. What would they need to do?
Who are you? That in a nutshell is exactly what LinkedIn is. You got to tell your story. Who are you? So who are you can be broken down in a couple different ways, right? Usually what I say with LinkedIn, it's really two pieces, right? It's who you are and what you can do, right? And that could be whether you're a job seeker, you're career pivoting, you're a business owner. What's your business and what are you trying to do for the customer, right? And it's that easy. Once you start, you can do the macroing it down a little bit better, but that's the simplest form of it, right? Who are you?
All right. So on the side of what you do on your profile is who you are has to be extremely clear. Can you give us an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah. So when you start as a business owner, let's look at it from an entrepreneur's piece, right? So who are you, right? People don't buy from a product, they buy from a relationship to the product. And so when you say, who are you? It's how do you tell the story of what your product or what service you can do or what you're bringing to the customer potentially. And then that's the easiest way for you to talk about the genuine piece. And you can just slowly start to get it dissected down to how do you do content? How do you tell your story? Times to tell the story. It just gets a little bit easier from that piece. But I always tell people to start off with who are you? What are you doing? How are you going to provide a value to that person? And then be genuine. And then from there, we just start looking at things on how we reverse engineer that whole process with all the minutia of the details behind it. But
So,
if
and
you
so when you say who are you and listing that, the fact that I am the CEO at such and such company, is that what you're talking about, or is there something different?
No, so that's exactly it, right? But if you start looking at the titles and the terminology, that's where it gets a little confusing to people, right? People kind of have a tendency to chase the titles or the names, right? So CEO, entrepreneur, everybody wants these cliche titles to it, right? But at the end of the day, if you said something differently and said, like in your case, how to exit without exiting, right? That's a brand and a cliche by itself. So that's inciting by itself. It's not necessarily the CEO aspect of it, but by you having that branding piece of your name or your title, that makes me want to learn a little bit more about it. So psychologically, it's making me want to know more about what you're doing. If I say CEO or entrepreneur, it's so vague and so bland, it doesn't really tell me what you do. But when you start looking at exactly when I say deep dive into who you are, and you say something like that, that's going to draw more people into. I need to know more about what service this person does, right? And then as they start going to your area and they start seeing what services you provide, that's how you start macroing it down to even talk about what you provide. How are you different than somebody else? And telling that story is going to be important. How you tell it, the timing of how you tell it, all that stuff is the most important part about LinkedIn. The other stuff is details, little minute details with it. But if you start off with that piece of it, that's what makes it more interesting.
Well, I want you later in our call to kind of go through best practices on how you do your title, how you do your headline, because those are some nuts and bolts things I think we could cover today pretty easily. But
Yeah.
on that other side of things, like you've got what you do with your profile, which is being very clear on who you are and what difference you make in people's lives. But on activity based on LinkedIn, is there one top thing like either do this or don't do this, like that you would say, hey guys, if you're taking notes at the beginning of this webinar and you're on LinkedIn, do this, or absolutely do not do this?
Well, the biggest thing that I always tell people right off the bat is don't treat LinkedIn like an Instagram or Twitter. They're totally different platforms. So
Mm.
the number one thing is it's a totally different platform, treat it differently. And what I mean by that is on Instagram, you can just throw out random hashtags. On Twitter, you can throw out random hashtags. On Instagram, you can post one time a day with, spammy type hashtags. But on LinkedIn, that same format that you're using will get flagged and it'll push it down where it doesn't get viewed. The same thing on Twitter. It's a little bit different on Twitter, where if you're not posting 6 to 7 times a day, it's irrelevant, right? So if somebody comes on LinkedIn and says, "Hey, I need to post 6 times a day," then what'll happen is LinkedIn will pick that algorithm up as a possible bot that or AI driven semantic that says post every 25 minutes or every 30 minutes, and then it's going to flag it and then not give it the viewpoints that it needs. So the number one thing that I always tell people is don't treat LinkedIn like other social media platforms because it's a totally different platform.
Yeah, that's something that you told me early on, and that really I didn't know what that meant at first, but I'm going to tell for everybody watching the webinar what that means. You just gave a couple examples, but for example, on LinkedIn or on Instagram, which I'm very active on Instagram. I have 50 plus thousand followers on Instagram. And when I post a post on there, I'm hashtagging as many concepts or categories as possible because that helps me get pushed into their feeds. Everybody's following those hashtags. And I was doing essentially the same thing to my LinkedIn, right? I would, at the bottom of my post, it would have 10, 15 hashtags. And what you taught me is that really 3 to 4 max are the hashtags that LinkedIn what their algorithms will actually push you to the top. That's what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. And then the hashtags, it's not just a 3 to 4 hashtags, it's who's following those hashtags. Because if you post a hashtag that says leadership, right? And leadership might have 1 million followers on LinkedIn, right? But if you say innovation or creativity, and those have 10,000 or I'm sorry, 10 million or 20 million followers, then I want to post a hashtag that's relevant to the conversation, that's going to get the most amount of followers that are following that hashtag and bring them onto the viewpoint as well. So it's not necessarily even just 3 to 4, it's the right 3 to 4 hashtags. So again, it goes back into that, not just necessarily what you post, it's also the formula of how you post, which makes it even more important.
Well, how do you know what hashtags are doing? Is there a tool or a tip that you could tell us how to choose the hashtags?
There's a couple different things. One of the big things that I usually do is I type in one of the hashtags that might be familiar on Instagram, right? Take a look at it. When I go on to LinkedIn, I can do a search and I can type in leadership, right? When you do a search on leadership and it pulls up the hashtag, it'll tell you how many people are following it. There's also a couple different websites you can go to that says top 100 hashtags on LinkedIn. There's 2 different websites. One of them updates it pretty frequently. And then just grab it from there in the top maybe 50 hashtags. If you can weave those into your storyline, it makes it a little bit different, right? So now you know exactly, I'm still telling the same story, but I want to get more of those followers of that hashtag to be relevant onto my post. And the reason why I tell people to do that too is because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself to one client base. So you want to kind of have a diverse background, kind of like what you talk about with investing, right? Diversify your portfolio. Well, if you don't diversify your portfolio of followers on LinkedIn, those are potentially other clients that you just didn't think about that might think, man, I seen his post, I was following leadership, or I was following his, hashtag entrepreneurship, and I seen that he posted something that was relevant to me that day. And then next thing you know, your hashtag crossed barriers to a different population that may need your services.
That's really interesting. Well, let's talk about then our just in general, what are the big things that when people come to you and say, hey, I want to figure out how to maximize LinkedIn? You just gave us a couple of really big highlights that I'd like to dig into later. We've got plenty of time to do that. But what are the other big concepts that people probably get wrong about LinkedIn?
Some of the biggest things that people get wrong with on LinkedIn is they think that they can treat it as a fire and forget. And I tell people, like, LinkedIn isn't a fire and forget platform. You can't put it on a AI driven software that's going to auto populate your posts, because what LinkedIn really, when you boil everything down about LinkedIn, what it really wants you to do is it wants people to be connected with relationships. Not necessarily always spammy, but the relationships is what the platform wants you to stay onto and build. And so as you build your profile on LinkedIn and you start building these relationships on LinkedIn, it doesn't want you to just like a post or forward a post, because those are taking the easy way out, right? It's just 2 seconds and I can do this, or 2 seconds and I can have a company, auto generate my post. What it really wants you to do is it wants you to know the people that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So it wants you to stay on the platform as long as possible in order to engage with the other people and keep them on the same platform. So if you're providing value and you're consistently following through with the post that you did, with the comments that people are posting on it, with the interactions and the relationships, then LinkedIn will reward you and keep you on there by giving more people to your profile. And so that's how it works. And that's the hardest thing for people to do, right? They don't want to spend a lot of time. They want to maximize, get on, get off. I need to find the client right now. Well, that's not really what LinkedIn is. It's really there for you to build the relationship to possibly sell or do other things.
Yeah, I think that for me, as someone who's been very active on LinkedIn historically, I only joined Instagram or got an Instagram account about 3 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, maybe 2 years ago. And Instagram and LinkedIn, I was treating the same way as I talked about. But the problem with LinkedIn is that it requires more work. Like you talk about the magic 2 hours, I think that's what you
Yeah.
call it, where
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
LinkedIn is their algorithm rewards you if once you post and that next 2 hours, if somebody makes a comment, you reply. If somebody likes it, you like it's that magic 2 hours where Instagram does it, as far as I know, doesn't care. You can set it, forget it, and kind of move on.
Right.
It's more you can automate Instagram where LinkedIn doesn't reward. As a matter of fact, I used to use Buffer, and I know Hootsuite's kind of the same thing,
Right.
to post to LinkedIn. And you were saying, nope, LinkedIn won't even put that in the feed. They'll let you do it, but they won't
Right.
reward you by putting you at the top of people's feeds. Is that right?
No, absolutely. That goes back into that. That's the difference, right? So when you look at LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'll compare the two of those together, Instagram is in react mode, meaning you can post something and everybody's going to see it and that's it. Whereas LinkedIn is the proactive mode, meaning you as a provider are going after your clients and solving a need, building the relationship in order to solve the need, right? So they're two different platforms. They don't even work synonymous together as a push-pull type system. It's one is very, I'm just going to put it out there and everybody's going to receive it and whatever happens, happens, right? And the other one's like, no, you have to go out and get it. And so that's the one thing that I like, that's the difference between the two, right? Instagram, you don't know who your clients are until they make a purchase or they're a request, right? Instagram or LinkedIn, actually, the client, who has the resources to buy your services. You've done all the homework to go get that person. That's how LinkedIn rewards you, by going to get them. And the reality of it is it's totally different demographics. Um, 65 to 70% of the people that are on LinkedIn are decision makers with resources to buy services. Instagram people are kind of like in a receive mode of, I might want to do something. Let me scroll through my feed. Oh, I like what he put out and I might purchase something. And so it's kind of like you're throwing out a net and hoping you catch something. Whereas LinkedIn is very strategic in how you go get your clients, what you do with after you connect with them, how you groom that. And LinkedIn is kind of more so, I even kind of likewise related to a garden, right? You've got to water it. You've got to pull the weeds out of it. You've got to tend to it. And that's kind of some of the basic fundamentals of aspect of what I do with it. So.
All right, so let's get into a little bit, since you said it was like a garden. Let's get into the weeds a little bit.
Absolutely.
let's
Yeah.
let's kind of talk about it. There's a few things that I remember you teaching me when we sat down, just short, just short stuff that made a big difference. And I want to share back to you what you told me and the differences it made. And then for all the people watching, for the students all around the world, that these are things that they too can do for their LinkedIn feed. So first of all is your headline, which is the thing under your name, which do you want to share yours or you want me to share mine? We can kind of show people what we're talking about.
Well, we can, if you want to share mine first, and then we can take a look at yours too, because they
Go
both
for
are
it.
kind of similar. Yeah.
Show yours and kind of point out the different, because I think people don't know what banner, name, headline, description, all that stuff. Kind of point out what those things are for people.
Absolutely. So this is actually my profile right now. And so some of the things that I talk to people about with LinkedIn is the banner behind your picture. That is like a street sign on the side of the road, right? It's valuable real estate, number one, and everybody needs to see what your product is without having to go through and scroll through things, right? So if I was to just do a search, I'll back up here. We're going to look at this one real quick. So if I just typed in, well, you know what, we're going to do entrepreneur. We're just going to do a search and we're going to see, I'll show you what I'm talking about with people's headlines, right? So we're going to look for people, and then we're going to go over here and we're going to narrow it down by, I want to say Nashville, Tennessee. All right, pick your choice. So this is one easy way where I can say, would you hire, if you're looking through these profiles, right? I'm just pick the term, generic term, entrepreneur, of profiles in Nashville, Tennessee. If I scroll through here, which person would I hire and I trust, right? I don't see a profile picture here. He's got the titles in it. It doesn't really look professional to me, right? Would I use this individual as an entrepreneur? Would I use this person? Would I use this person, right? There's so many different ways that people will pick up on things. The number one thing is a picture's worth 1,000 words. If I'm looking for you as a individual, and let's just say IT sales, right? I want to find somebody that does IT sales. Same thing in Nashville, 13,000 people. Do I want to buy from this person? Do I want to buy from these people?
Where'd you come up with that number? You just said 13,000.
In Nashville, Tennessee, there's
Look at that. Wow.
IT sales. Yep. So again, first off the bat is, who do I want to buy from? Who do I need their services from? And the picture is worth 1,000 words. So that's my first thing, right? But then, so if I see something that I like and I say, you know what, I like this. His profile kind of has got a genuine. Well, there's a billboard on the side of the highway, but it doesn't tell me where to go for the business. It doesn't tell me any email addresses. So now I've got to go through more. I got to click through. I got to go find the information. I got to scroll through here. I got to hit more. So anytime that somebody has to go through that many clips, they're probably not going to do it. So one of the big things that I always tell people is the first thing is your headline is going to tell people exactly what you do, right? And that's I see that. But then once I go to your profile, this is going to be a great immediate display of you, your website, your email address. So it's valuable real estate that maximizes without people having to go digging for the information.
Now let me ask a question. So that part that you highlight that again, that part right there is called in LinkedIn vocabulary headline. You can type anything there you want. It does not have to be your name, your title, what you do. You could just put, I like Lucky Charms. I mean, you could put anything there you want, right?
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
when you search for IT sales or entrepreneur, is it only pulling that word from headline or from the entire profile?
It's going to pull from the entire profile. And once you've got the profiles that you look for in that specialty, then you can start looking at how creative and how generic people get with their headlines. The headlines is 200 characters to, again, what do you do, right? How do you do it for me? What's eye-catching about it? What stands out from the noise from the other 13,000 people that are doing IT sales, right? So you always have to think, that's the purpose of LinkedIn, is being genuine on what you're providing, right? Are you providing a service to an employer that wants to hire you? Are you providing a service to a customer that wants to hire you? What does your headline say about what you're trying to provide to somebody?
Right. So if you're the CEO of Energy Lighting Services, which is the company I started, and I was a CEO for 10 years.
Right.
But that doesn't really help anybody. Me putting CEO of Energy Lighting Services in a headline doesn't help me. It doesn't really tell anybody anything, because that's in my profile later, further down the profile, where it actually says my work history. So I should have used that to say something like, I can save you 30% on your electric bills, or something like that, where people,
Absolutely.
ooh, I want to talk to that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what sets you apart from anybody else that's selling energy efficient products, right? So that's a way for you to tell your story and be found by others, right? And you can get as creative as you want to. It just kind of depends on the industry, but you got to look at a way to set yourself apart from your peers that are doing the same thing as you, but also that may resonate with a potential client.
So
So,
now that we've got title, or excuse me, headlines. So
yep,
headlines are there. So you got your name, you've got headline.
yep.
So where are people going to see, well, what do you do? Like, who do you work for? Where does that show up?
Yeah. So the next big thing that I talk about with people is when you, and mine's going to be a little bit different, right? But your about section is going to be basically, so your headline says, this is what I can do for you. Your about section is how you do it for me, right? So once you go down and you've seen you've got the eye candy, you've got the image, you've got the headline. The very next thing that you really want to do is you want to tell how you can do solve the problem that the customer needs, whether that's an employer that's trying to hire you, or it's for you to tell your potential story to why a potential client would need your services. So your about section is how I can solve your problem, right?
And where's the
It's,
about section? Scroll to that.
so when you scroll right down, this is the about section. It comes right below. Uh, Once you start building up your all-star profile, it's going to go from here. It's going to go down to your featured articles that you may want to highlight and spotlight what you may have done. It's going to show your activity, and then it's going to go to the about section.
Okay.
And that's with everybody. And from there, then you start going into your experience on how you solve those problems for people. So what is relevant? You can take some things out, you can kind of adjust it. You can prioritize them, moving them around, whichever ones you want to go around. Because if you want one to have more precedence over the other one, you can move things around. And then the other thing is, once you start going into your experience, this is one other way that gives people credibility, right? When you add your duty positions as experience, you can also lend credibility by adding multimedia to it. So did you do a presentation? Did you do a TED talk? Did you install something that in the state of Tennessee not a lot of the people have done? Did you work on a $20 million project doing whatever? Adding the multimedia to it lends credibility, because now it's a newspaper article. It could be other podcasts. It could be other events that you're a part of. But these things all lend credibility to who you are and what service you provide. So the more that you get multimedia on these, the more, again, people say, oh man, he's done a lot. I'd love to use his services, right? So doing your experience is a great way to highlight what you can do. Adding multimedia is a good way to provide credibility to what you do.
And how do you do that? How would you add multimedia to your work experience?
Yeah, so if you was to go into, you set it up, you want to do your date and time. Once you hit your pencil right there, it's going to scroll down. It's going to give you the option to add media. And if you want to add media, it could be anything. Like I said, it could be a newspaper article, whatever lends credibility to something that you may have done, just add it into it.
Gotcha.
And it's too easy.
Back on your, going back up to your name and your headline, I noticed you've got little, not emojis, but you've got little pictures. What's that about? And is that a recommended thing, or is that just something you like to do?
So it depends on your industry, right? So obviously you might not see the CEO of LG over in Korea adding emojis to it, right? But in this space, I want to try to do something that sets myself apart from people differently, instead of just being bland, right? I don't like a black and white billboard. So I added these things in because that's kind of like the way that, military is kind of in your face, solving things, kicking doors down, getting the objective done. And so for me, I wanted to set myself apart differently. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I am somebody that can teach you how to use LinkedIn. And so I wanted to use things like that to kind of be catchy eye candy, right? If you're looking straight out in the field and you're going hunting on something, if you look straight at it, you won't see it. But if you look to the side or to the left or the right, and there's a subtle movement by it, it's going to catch your attention like that, right? So for me, adding the emojis, and some people do, be different, right? How you be different is how you accentuate different things. So you don't have to add the emojis, but I highly encourage do something different, right? So if you wanted to make these things bold, different than the other numbers, that's something different that sets you apart from your peers, right? Um,
Well, I want to kind of camp out on that comment for a moment, because the entrepreneurs in Results University who watch these webinars, they need to understand what you just said and the importance of that. Is this idea about being different when you're marketing yourself. Being different outperforms saying that you're better, because everybody says they're better. I'm the top salesperson at IKEA or I'm whatever. That's fine. Like top, best, most important, all those words, nobody believes those in marketing because everybody says it. We're the best, we're the number one, we're top 10, we're like, okay, who cares? But when you're marketing yourself and trying to get attention, and as an entrepreneur, you want to get attention, the reward goes to those who with attention. It's about being different. So what are you calling yourself? Like, I love, Eric, you call yourself the transition hacker, right? That's in your thing, like transition hacker. um, I teach people how to exit without exiting. That's a little different. If I just said I'm a business coach,
yeah,
nobody cares. Even what if I said I'm the number one business coach in the country? Okay, maybe I could say that, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to believe it. But if I say I teach people how to exit without exiting, which is different, then they're going to, oh, okay, you got my attention. Now let's talk. So I want to encourage people to really think about that. As an entrepreneur, you guys need to think, how are you showing up different on LinkedIn? Because if you don't have a picture, if you don't have a banner, you don't have a good headline, you're just one of the millions of people on LinkedIn that nobody's paying attention to.
yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back to that. You said business coach, right?
Yeah.
It's so cliche, and the people that are doing it in any industry, it doesn't really matter. But just typing in business coach in Nashville, Tennessee, there's 5,500 people with that in their profile, right? And if I just had to scroll through here, the headlines don't stand out, the pictures don't stand out. It's so, you've got to be different, right? You just got to be that diamond in the rough, so to speak. And that's going to be, the difference between you getting the job or not.
Yeah, so many people treat LinkedIn as a resume. Like, here's my name, here's my title, here's my contact information, here's where I've worked, here's what I've done. And when's the last time you just couldn't wait to go to somebody's office and pull out a file folder full of resumes and read them until you found the one you liked? Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody wants to do that. So Results University students, please listen. Don't treat LinkedIn like a resume. Sure, you can list all the crap you did and all the places you worked if you want to. That's fine if it's relevant. But the main thing is, people like me and people like Eric and other people are looking to do business with people that are different and actually stand out in the crowd. I remember one time when I was in my 20s, and I don't know if this is a good story or a bad one. I'm going to tell it anyway. But I was applying for a job at a company. It was a pretty good sized Nashville company. It was they were connected with an international company, but they were their own little deal here in Nashville. They were pretty good size. And I knew it was a highly sought job. I was early in my 20s, just got married. I needed a job. I was a youth minister at a church, and I needed a part-time job, or a full-time job to supplement my part-time ministry work. And I sent my resume in on bright pink cardstock paper. Maybe it wasn't pink, but it was a bright. And you know why I did it? I did it because I knew they were going to get tons of resumes, and I did it to stand out. Not that I was better. I just wanted her to remember. And you know what? I got the interview, and the lady, that was one of the first things she said to me. She goes, "Well, I couldn't ignore it. It actually stood out." So we need, all of us as Results University students, as entrepreneurs, your LinkedIn profile has got to stand out. So do a banner, the other thing that you said, you haven't talked about this, Eric, is your photograph there, your picture of your
Yep.
headshot. And a moment ago, it was a video. So what's that all about?
Yeah. So that, when you get to, so not everybody gets that kind of capability initially. It takes a little while to get to it. But once you get creativity mode, it allows you the opportunity to give a 30-second elevator pitch, if you will, of who you are and what you do. And so I definitely tell people. Matter of fact, when it came out, the access came out, I was like, hey man, you need one of these, because it's a 30-second way for somebody to build a connection with you. And I highly encourage it. It's again, people buy from people, they don't buy from a name, right? And so in one of those, it's kind of, I really like it a lot, and how it works out. Because the only thing, the way that it happens is if you go to the profile, you step out of it, and then you come back. So um, now if I go back over here, if I was to turn it up, I don't think you'd be able to even hear it. It's gonna, that's a 30-second spiel. You wouldn't be able to hear it because I actually turned it down, but that's a good opportunity for somebody to tell your story for 30 seconds. Talk about it. The other thing when you talk about that with that resume is I want to go back on that one too, because when you're writing your profile, I tell people, think conceptually who you are versus what you did, right? That's again goes back into that telling the story a little bit differently. Your LinkedIn profile should be like the front windshield of a car. It's where you're going, not where you came from. Where you came from is important for an employer to know, hey, what's their experience and their trajectory? But as in the ability of launching your business as an entrepreneur, where are you going? What are you doing? Not what you used to do. So don't write it like you said, your resume.
Yeah, well, that's important, and I think that I think that that's a subtle tweak to the mindset of how we think about LinkedIn. Is that putting your headline and your titles about what you do for people and how you can take them to a better place is so much more important and more valuable than I am or I was. What I can do is important. So let me shift just a smidge on this, Eric, if I could, for a moment.
Yeah.
So the people watching this, whether they're again live now or they're watching it or recording later, they're entrepreneurs or they're entrepreneurs. They're starting something or they actually have something going. So they may be thinking right now something that they haven't said out loud, but they're thinking, all right, so what you've all done, what Jason, you and Eric are talking about is about how to get people to notice you so you can get jobs. But I don't see it that way, but I bet you somebody's thinking that right now. Well, I don't need a resume. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm never going to be an employee again. That's fine. But how do you maximize this as an entrepreneur to get in front of people? What would you say to their, I know what I would say, but what would you say to that?
So I would be, okay. So when you go fishing, right, you don't go fish for catfish with a spinner bait for a largemouth bass, right? You fish for the fish that you want to catch for. So the hardware you need, the equipment you need is different as an entrepreneur than it is as a job seeker. The largest search engine on the platform right now, between Google and everything else, the largest professional search engine out there is LinkedIn. And so I'm gonna unpack that a little bit too, right? So the president of Keller Williams, I made a post with Keller Williams. Hey, it's no secret the largest, the fast producing Keller Williams market center in the United States is Fort Campbell's. It's number 76, I think it is, out of 841, right? So when I made a post on that, that drew his attention. Like, wait, why is that? And then I said, well, let's kind of unpack the data a little bit. The hottest real estate markets are all within a 60-mile radius of a massive military installation. So there's the information. So LinkedIn is just a platform. Finding potential clients, it means I'm using a different lure to go fishing. As an entrepreneur, you may want to go find the clients that you're looking at, right? So let's say that for example, you are looking for, in your industry is looking for how to save people money on, by using leads type, lights or lighting systems, or how to save energy, right?
Right.
So what if you did want to, and I'm assuming you want to go find companies that are doing that, right? So in this instance, I want to go find the company. So let's say I want to see HCA. HCA is massive down in Nashville, but let's say I want to find the person that could make the decision to make a purchase with an HCA, right? So in this case, I'm fishing. I need to go fish with the right lure with the right client. So in this regards, I'm trying to find the people, and I actually have a lot of connections, and I'm just using them as an example. But with this, I'm going to be able to find out the potential decision maker at that location in Nashville, or I'll just say Tennessee. No, I'll say Nashville. So this is, again, I'm fishing. LinkedIn is the actual ocean. I'm trying to fine tune my lure that I want to go after the client, right? So let's see, CIO, right? CIOs, well, let's say CFO, because they're the ones that make decisions with money, right?
Yep.
So here's all the CFOs that we're looking for that used to be a part of. We're going to say current company. I want to unselect these because, believe it or not, the other big thing on LinkedIn is it's going to list all the companies that are owned by HCA as we unpack it. So I just want to unselect all of these and only maybe go with, I'll use TriStar Division. I want to get rid of all these. And I want to try to find the right person that's going to make the decision for me to make my sale or my potential pitch to, right? There's 84 people that either are employed or used to be employed. This used to be the assistant CFO at HCA Healthcare. Who's the person that sets the calendar invites to go see the CFO of HCA, right? It's going to be normally the assistant. Wouldn't it be nice to have a good conversation with that person that's going to potentially be a decision maker or get me in front of the decision maker that can make a purchase, right? So this is how you start unpacking on what using LinkedIn for. If I'm an entrepreneur, how do I go get the client? How do I fish with the right lure to go get the right fish that I'm fishing for, right? And as an entrepreneur, you need to know who your client is that you need to present your services to. And then it goes into how you make that, how do you cast, right? So how do I cast that lure? How far out do I go? Am I clunky with it? Do I make a lot of noise on the side of the boat when I'm doing it, right? So in this case right here, I'm just trying to find the right person that I can actually toss my cast to on the side of where it needs to be at and get in front of the right person that can make a decision. So as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for your next client. That's the difference between Instagram and LinkedIn, right? Instagram is I'm throwing a net out and I'm just going to drag whatever I get back in with me, right? Whoever wants my services. But LinkedIn is like I'm strategically pulling the lure out of the tackle box. I'm strategically, putting the lure. I'm in the right waters. I'm at the right temperature, the right time. And then I'm going to cast it right exactly where I need it to be at, right? So these are the people that, and as an entrepreneur, that you just need to do a deep dive on how do you go get your clients? How do you go fish for your clients? And then the other part of it is, okay, so I've pulled out the tackle box. I've got my fishing lures here. I've got 84 different types of fishing lures. Now, I've got the right one that I want. I think it might be this person right here. So, hey, let's have a good conversation with Ashley. So I'm going to go to the profile here. And then I'm like I said, I've got the rod. I'm about ready to do my cast. And here's the cast, right? I'm going to connect with a personalized invitation, right? How are you doing, Ashley? I'd love to be able to talk with you and get a cup of coffee the next couple of weeks. I noticed that you're working for HCA. I think I have something valuable that HCA may be able to use. And I'm paraphrasing all this with the industry, of course. But this is exactly how you go fish for the client that you may need as an entrepreneur.
Okay, that's really, really good tactical information. So now what I think you're saying is we've got on one hand, as entrepreneurs, we need to make sure that we set up our profile correctly and we engage with the platform correctly. Now, once we've done that and we start going out and actually fishing for opportunities, we can search for the people that we're trying to connect with and offer our services. But if we search for them before we set up the profile correctly and we're not engaging with the platform right, and we find somebody we want to work with, they're going to look at us and go, well, who is this joker? We don't know who this is.
100%.
Yeah, CEO at ABC company, who cares? I don't even know what ABC company does. But if it said, I can save you $1 million this year, guaranteed. If that's what our headline says, okay, you have my attention. What does that mean? How would you do that? Absolutely. Now, the other thing I would say back to to what you were talking about to answer that hypothetical question that somebody may be asking on this webinar right now is that, well, I'm not an employee. Why would I want to do this? I'm an entrepreneur, and one of the companies that I own is Results Through Integrity, and is where I do all my business coaching and consulting. I run cohorts. I run masterminds. I do one-on-one coaching, et cetera. I do all these things, and it's through that company. Well, so on my profile, do you mind pulling mine
Yeah.
up? So you're driving. I'll let you pull it up, and you can critique mine in just a moment.
Yeah.
But if you see my profile here, my headline says exit without exiting, and I've got my little video because you told me to do that.
Yeah.
So that's all set up. I had a compatibility meeting call today with a person in New York who owns his own company, who wants to exit within the next 2 to 4 years. He heard me on a call completely unrelated to anything that I do professionally. I was just on a call as a participant. I made a couple of notes, messages about what I do. We got off the call. He goes, looks me up on LinkedIn, sees this, says, "Ooh, I want to follow this guy." Follows me for a couple of months. And then he finally went to my website, clicked on I scheduled a call, had the call with him today. And he's probably, obviously we're working through the details, probably going to become a client of mine. Now, if that had happened a year ago, he probably would have just showed up on my website or on my LinkedIn and it said that I'm a business coach. And he nothing in that statement would have connected him with his current situation in life and what he wants to do.
Absolutely.
So I've taken what you've taught to heart, and you could critique me, be honest. Like if there's anything in here that's not right, like I've done what you've told me to do, and it's increased my followers, increased my connections, and increased my pocketbook because people are paying money to do what I do because they find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I was to, I'm going to take a look at from top down on your profile, right? So this is phenomenal because again, if I seen that this right here is I can't, right? So this is the lure I'm fishing, and as a fish, this was interesting to me to go ahead and take a bite at, right? So by seeing before and seeing this, I'm taking a bite out of it because I'm on your page now. Now I'm seeing, okay, this is interesting, right? I see the credibility. I see his featured articles. Like, wow, it's getting more interesting, right? I'm starting to see that, there's a lot of activity. So again, if you don't have your profile set up right, that customer is going to quickly discount you and toss you to the wayside with everybody else, right? So you have a very short window of opportunity to incite that fish to take a bite out of your profile, right? And then come on your profile and then figure out, is it even interesting enough for me to even look further, right? And you've got all the visual optics of something that's interesting enough. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What story do you want it to tell you about you? I can't hit home enough about that because that's really important. You've got the credibility, you've got the activity because you're actually out there every day. So I'm seeing what you're doing as a customer. I'm going to see, what did you post every. I can go here. I can look at the articles you may have done. If it's interesting, you may have done some articles, right? So again, these are actually really good, strategic, very optical, very visual, very appealing. That's what people kind of go for. It's basic human nature, right? What gets the eye attention gets the focus. And all this is perfect, right? So I've got everything I need right here. Now I can go back and see posts. Okay, well, let me see, what is he posting about? What's he talking about? Or I could even also, now, most of the time they won't go directly into these. They're just going to see the all activity of the individual. And that's really important because then it tells people, what did you comment? What are you posting? Not just that you're posting, you're actually posting on other people's information, which is really good because now you're a subject matter expert. I want to know what you're saying to people, right? So I can see exactly what you're posting with people. Does it resonate with me, right? Is he saying more things that may be interesting to me as a potential client? So one good thing I would recommend is check this out. And a lot of people they have a very scarcity mindset with it. Only participating in your stuff, you miss the opportunity to talk with your competitors and see their potential clients as well, right? So, and what I mean by that is, right? So let's say you have a BMW. There's probably 5 different BMW dealerships in Nashville or metropolitan area, right? I'm paraphrasing. There's probably 3, right? They all provide the same service to a BMW. Just because that's a different company doesn't mean that I might not want, I'm going down here at this one location. I've repeatedly done it, but I'm not going to check any other BMW service technician out, right? There might be a better service that's provided at a different location. You looking at your peers is a great opportunity that those clients, there's multiple fishing lures, right? To fish for bass, multiple clients, multiple providers. Sometimes going to your competitors and commenting on their posts and providing support to them means sometimes you might attract clients from them. And what a lot of people don't realize the value of it, and they have a scarcity mindset. Don't touch my client base. I'm only going to look for my client base. You're missing out on a great opportunity to shop around at your competitors. What are they doing? How are their clients looking? Because guess what? You might be providing just a different service, and you're missing out on an opportunity to be hanging around that environment and get some of those clients potentially as well. So what I always tell people to do, and this is something that I'm kind of seeing, if it was my recommendation on your profile, is start finding other potential entrepreneurs that are doing some really valuable things and start participating on their pages as well, because you don't know that there might be some clients that are going to kind of swim over to your end of the river or the lake and see that you're doing something a little bit differently that may be a little bit more appealing to them that day, right? And so like I said, a lot of times people just don't delve outside their own niche and they stick around their area. And I always say, you got to fish everywhere, because when you watch it, and I'm not a fish, I hate, I'm using that terminology a lot. I don't watch fishing shows, but I love the visual of it, because when you do watch a fishing tournament, they're not staying in the same spot. They're fishing all up and down the rivers, the banks, underneath things, underneath trees. And so they're never staying in one place too long. If you stay on your profile, you're missing out on potential clients in other areas as well. And you're also missing out on other opportunities to learn something new from a competitor, right? It doesn't mean go out there and steal everything that they got, but it definitely means that you could learn something different that you never considered, right? And that's
Yeah.
a part of that inspiration. We get inspiration in everything that we do. So I always say, definitely get out of your own bubble and go look at everybody else's bubble. And that's one thing that I typically, I will say that I'm very big on that. And I learned that a long time ago, that if I only was to stay in the veteran space, I would miss out on a lot of potential clients outside of. The reality of it is, most of the veterans aren't very good clients. They don't purchase things that often. More clients come from outside that, because it's a different population. In the military, most people are there ready to do something for you. They don't feel the need to pay for anything, invest in themselves. And so it took a coach a long time ago to say, Eric, get out of that niche and start fishing different areas, because there's other clients that needs the same service that you have. And if you pigeonhole yourself in one corner, you're missing out on a lot of different opportunities later on, right? On my activity, I'm never on just my stuff. On big posts, I will, because I'm trying to engage. And if I get a couple hundred people, but this is a great CRM company, right? Alize is a former one hell of an athlete, but she works for a company called Chili Piper, which is an amazing CRM database. I'm over there looking to CRM database companies to figure out how do they manage clients. So I'm always learning different things, right? Same thing. I'm always in different areas on different companies, competitors. I'm just trying to get inspiration in a lot of different ways from a lot of different resources, right? Now, if I have a post that has 105 comments and things like that, it's going to it's going to show a lot of the same thing, but that's just because of the volume of that, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see this a lot. But if as a customer, and I go to your profile, your activities, I want to see diversity for personal growth and development. But also sometimes your clients could be looking at it differently and seeing where you're putting your focus at as well. So that's a really good thing to do.
When you do workshops, when you talk to lead workshops for entrepreneurs or for anybody, civilians, veterans, whoever it happens to be, what are the top 3 or 4 questions that they normally ask you in the course of those things? And if you wouldn't mind, kind of let's go through those one at a time and answer those questions, because I'm sure on this webinar, because not a lot of people are going to be able to see this live, as many as people watch it on the recording later.
Right.
So let's ask that question out loud and then let you answer that.
So the biggest thing there's usually really, and I'm glad you said 3, because there really is 3. The first thing is, I don't even know how to set up my profile. And so we walk through kind of what we just did earlier today, is walking through how to set up the profile. And then the next thing is, well, okay, so now what, right? So the now what is, okay, well, how do we start telling your story? right? And that goes into the how you post, how frequent you post, what time of the day, how many characters do you get. We go into all the minutia on how do you start telling your story, right? And I like that part because then the next question is, I don't know how to get my content, right? So how to build your profile, how to tell your story, and how do I get content, right? What's the purpose of that? That's really the three basic fundamentals that I talk about, like as an entrepreneur, building your brand, or as you name it. Those are the three things that I talk about. The hardest one for people to do, believe it or not, is to think about and conceptualize, how do I get my content? And that is so easy to do, right? I get content because I'm walking down the store and I might see something that day, right? I carry, notes on my iPhone, and believe it or not, it could be a conversation that me and you have. It could be anything. It could be hearing a podcast in the morning, and I'm like, man, that would resonate with the population that I talk to a lot, which is transitioning veterans, and that would resonate. And believe it or not, a lot of the posts that I've made, I try to create content. I dissect what is currently that the companies in my industry looking for or talking about. And I learned that actually from a couple companies, sitting down with them on how they actually get ahead of problems first. And so that was okay. So what is my industry talking about? I'm building content. So that's the part three aspect, is how to get the content. One of them is, what is my industry talking about that I can provide a solution to? What was inspiring for me, that was a podcast, a conversation, casual conversation with somebody, anything that was inspiring, and then which is kind of like, your daily routines and habits. And then the other thing is just on the go or on the fly, so to speak. I just need to create something, right? And I'm not doing it regularly, but at this moment, I just needed something to just throw down, right? Because I might have ran out of 3 weeks worth of content, so to speak. So those are kind of how that piece, but all three of those are kind of the generally top three questions. The third question, which is, how do I develop content? That's the normal one that stumps a lot of people, and it's not hard. It's just nobody's ever had you corral you in different areas to try to figure out what you're doing.
So then the going back to what we talked about earlier in our discussion, is using bots to post on your behalf, like
Right.
Hootsuite or Buffer or others.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing from you is absolutely LinkedIn will not reward you for that, and it's a waste of time.
At 100%, unequivocally. And the reason for that is kind of, and there's a bunch of different fail safes that they can use to that, right? When you post a bot and there's no activity within the golden hour as well, or the magic hour at 2 hours, if there's no activity with that and you just did a fire and forget, then LinkedIn recognizes right off the bat. And a couple of different things. I think Hootsuite now puts even their little tag or watermark on the posting afterwards. LinkedIn picks it up. So anytime they sense that there's non-genuine content, or content that's not going to be engaged with, they already recognize right off the bat it's not genuine content. It's just an easy way out. It's cheating the system, and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Um,
So with Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, that may or may not work on its own merits, but certainly with LinkedIn, if you've got an automated posting application, it is not helping you, which I find really, I wouldn't have believed you, except that I've experienced it now. But I used Buffer for years, and I liked Buffer. Buffer worked great, and I would go in and I would post twice a day on LinkedIn, and I would go through. I'd spend about 3 hours once every other week getting my content ready for the next couple of weeks, and I put out great content, and I had lots of people comment and follow, but not a ton of engagement. But I would get real life engagement. Hey, I see you on LinkedIn all the time, man. Every time I turn, but what I think what you're saying is that bigger picture, the 3,614 followers that I have aren't going to see my stuff if I'm using a bot. I've got a live post. I've got a live post it each time.
Absolutely. So now here, what a lot of people they're handicapped by the automated publishing or automated posting software, right? You have to look at it for the exact purpose that what LinkedIn is. It's to build relationships. You can't build relationships with automation, right? Automation is just getting something out there as much as possible. There's no relationship building with it. And that's the sole design that it encourages people to do is to build the relationships to do what? Get a job, career pivot, get your business to business development, sales, all these different things is building relationships. And that's just the fundamental aspect of what LinkedIn is. And it will reward you for being genuine and building the relationships. And again, it goes back to, I would think that you would want to build a relationship off of a client that could potentially pay 10, 20, $30,000 worth of services,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Because
right.
and you think about LinkedIn, right? So if we walked up into Opryland malls and you walk up to a stranger and say, "Hey, I'm Jason Duncan. I'm a business coach. I help exit how to exiting. All right, I'm out." Right? There's no relationship building with that. And if you treat LinkedIn like that with an automation with it, just think about how you would feel if somebody walked up to you and did that to you in Opryland. And that's the way LinkedIn, the platform itself, looks at these transactions as something like that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about something specific, a feature in LinkedIn, and that is stories. They just recently introduced that. Tell me about your thoughts about stories on LinkedIn.
I think it's kind of trendy. They're trying to keep up to speed, so to speak, with the other Instagram and things like that are doing stories. I'm not convinced on the value of it yet. Now, I'll caveat that to say that if you're a job seeker, I don't think there's any value with it. If you're an entrepreneur, I think there is value with it, because I do think there's more entrepreneurs in the 28 to 35-year-old group that are still on Instagram, and stories is relatable to that generation. So I think if you are doing them, I think it will potentially, again, it goes back to, if you're fishing on the side of you're using different lures, you're using different tactics, different locations, right? So I honestly believe you should be using everything at your disposal. I'm not too convinced on it at a bigger level. Like if somebody's trying to sell a $5 million deal as a commercial real estate investor, I don't see the value in it. But if it's 28 to 35-year-old that did do a startup as an entrepreneur, they might want to see your stories if you're going out there. So don't neglect it, but don't put all your seeds in one basket, so to speak. I do think you should be as diversified as possible on the platform. I have not done it yet, because I don't, the kind of the niche so far to me is I don't feel it's pertinent to my industry. But that's just my opinion, right? Everybody has a professional understanding of things, right?
Well, I was doing stories for a while because just in general for my marketing company, they were telling me I need to do a certain number of stories on Instagram every day, and they automatically push to Facebook because I'm not on Facebook except just pushing over from Instagram. So I just
Right.
decided to start doing stories on LinkedIn, but I wasn't getting any views. I mean, it was a handful, 5 to 10. It wasn't a big deal. And I asked you, and you said, well, probably not worth the juice. The juice is not worth the squeeze. So instead, just record a video unedited and pop it into your LinkedIn just as a post. And
Yeah.
when I started doing that, golly, man, the views started going through the roof. And there are some that I had 300 or 400 views on just a posted video. But
Right.
it was a video I would record, with my cell phone, just, a selfie style, and then
Yeah.
hit post. And I found also, again, I don't know if this is, coincidence or it's true, but if I took that video and edited it at all and then popped it in LinkedIn, it didn't get as good of views that if I just did a raw, like just me unedited and post. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Do you
It
know?
does. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So that's a part of the part three of the top three questions people ask is, how do I come up with content? Believe it or not, it rewards you, not because that's the algorithm by design. It rewards you because that's exactly what people want. They don't really like Christmas wrapped presentations. It's so commercial TV after midnight, right? Like all these infomercials. The minute LinkedIn sees, well, two things actually. It's by when they started testing it out and seeing how genuine content would, by videos, by little, when I said, right, just try 2 minutes or less, genuine videos on your phone, your views are going to go like this. The minute you do production choreographed items, your view count kind of goes down, because again, LinkedIn kind of looks at, like, is it genuine? Is it scripted? Is it made up? Is it, like, that's not really building a relationship. But if you do it unedited, like you said, like I said, with the take it from the phone, people actually are more responsive with it, and it tells your brand and your story a little bit more. It's off the cuff, it's genuine, it's raw, people like it, and LinkedIn will reward you for it. So you don't have to put all that effort into having a team do multimedia. You don't have to do all that stuff to be successful with it. I mean, I took just off that one video that I did, and I was at the top of a mountain. I mean, what is it, 3,000 views? Yeah, 3,000 views, 121 people, and 105 comments on it. And it wasn't me. It was a raw, real video. It was like, man, and it resonated with people because I'm telling people like, this is why you need to come to Tennessee. Like, this is, and it wasn't me. It was just genuine. And look at that.
Well,
Four
that's the
seconds.
benefit. That's the benefit of having 36,000 followers on
Wow,
LinkedIn, which you
that is
have.
true.
So, well, so Eric, this is fantastic. So I want to kind of give you an opportunity to say any other big tips or info you want to give about LinkedIn before I close it down. And I have a couple of announcements about something you and I are going to be doing with LinkedIn locally here in Nashville for those that are local. So hang tight for that. But any other big ideas or tips about LinkedIn?
The big thing that I want people to take away from this is the genuineness is what people respond to, and being genuine on the platform is exactly what you need to be doing with. Don't get so focused on the minutia with it, and focus on how genuine you're trying to solve somebody's problem or need. And once you look at that and then start conceptually unpacking everything else, it'll get much easier from there.
All right. Well, Eric, this has been extremely helpful. So if you would mind, stop your screen share for a moment, and we'll finish up with a few housekeeping items. Ladies and gentlemen of Results University, this is the type of content that we bring to you on a regular basis. We want to bring to you high quality content, actionable items on things that you're dealing with day in, day out as entrepreneurs. LinkedIn is one of those things. Now, if you are going to sit there and say, well, I'm not on LinkedIn, my people are on LinkedIn, I said that for years. And in fact, I didn't participate in LinkedIn for a long time because I believed that. But when I got on LinkedIn, I started making money. Now, how does that happen? Well, it happens just the way that Eric was talking about. You've got to maximize the profile. You got to make sure that it's different enough where people will be engaged and attracted to you. And then you engage with the profile or with the platform the right way by doing the right things. And then you can start fishing. So it's about setting up the bait, setting up the traps, whatever the hunting terms that we're going to use. You got to set it all correctly. So no matter if you're in real estate, if you're a coach like me, if you sell shoes, if you have a brick and mortar, if you have a cosmetology school, no matter what it is that you're doing, you can maximize LinkedIn to your benefit. But it's the long game. It is not a short game. I told that story earlier, and I made a few tweaks. This guy hears me. He goes and looks at my profile. 2 months later, he finally says, yeah, let's schedule a meeting. That's actually really, really fast. What the long game really is going to be over months and years of people seeing you actually know what you're talking about. So Eric Horton here is one of the top 10 guys on LinkedIn experts in the world, lives here in Middle Tennessee. He was at Fort Campbell up in Clarksville, Montgomery County, Tennessee, and now he's living in the area. And he and I are going to be hosting a 4-hour LinkedIn workshop live and in person in Hendersonville, Tennessee on August the 5th. We are working out all the details right now, but the location is definitely planned. It's going to be at my office. I have a training room at Energy Lighting Services in Hendersonville, Tennessee on August the 5th. We're going to go from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. that day. It's a 4-hour workshop, live and in person, and we're going to max it out, I think, at 40 people. So we're going to let 40 people come to this thing. We're working on details, but since you attended this webinar, we have access to your contact information. You will be getting information from us on that. If you have anybody else that you want to bring, you are welcome to forward that. But Eric and I will be live doing a live training. And in that live training, part of what we're going to be doing is we'll actually sit down we can't do it with all 40 people. Who knows, maybe only 10 people show up, and then we could do it with all 10. But whoever shows up, we're going to give them tactical, real advice where you'll be logging into your LinkedIn account and making changes live to your profile so that when you leave, you will actually be in a better position. Like I said, we're working out details, including costs. We don't know what the cost is going to be. We're working out logistics and how much it's going to cost us to put this thing on. But we're going to reach out to you. But that's August the 5th. Go ahead and put it on your calendar. It will not be like videoed or Zoomed. So my apologies for many of you who aren't here in Nashville. But if you're in the Nashville area, August the 5th, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., we're going to be doing this live LinkedIn workshop in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And we'd like for you to be there. On another note, of course, with Results University, we do 3 of these live trainings every month for everybody who is a student. We've got the next one coming up in August. It's already in the events calendar. So log in, go to the events calendar, look at what it is, put it on your calendar. And I will be traveling next month to California. We'll be doing a whole week of podcast recording for the Root of All Success there. And so some of those live trainings will probably be from a remote location. I won't be here in my home office. Results University is one of the top platforms for teaching entrepreneurs how to start, how to grow, how to scale, how to enjoy their businesses with the focus of exit without exiting. I'm the real Jason Duncan. He is Eric Horton, the transition hacker. Thank you for being here on this webinar today. Thank you for logging in. Thank you for your time. I hope it was beneficial. If you need anything, reach out to me through the resultsuniversity.org website. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Eric, very much. Appreciate everything you gave us today. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.